Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the weeds on a critical topic. What exactly is professional geoscience in Canada? We're unpacking the legal and professional definitions. Our mission here is pretty clear. We want you to understand how professional geoscience is defined, what its limits are, and basically what kind of work legally requires a licensed professional, a PGO, especially when it comes to protecting the public and the environment.
It's a really important area. Geosciences are one of the two big regulated technical pillars in Canada. The other one, of course, being engineering,
Yeah.
right? And they're both fundamental for safety, resources, the environment. But their core jobs are different. Engineering, well, that's mostly about designing and building systems for humans, things we put onto the earth. Geoscience, on the other hand, is focused on understanding, evaluating, and interpreting the natural earth systems themselves, the ones society relies on. It's about reading the planet, you could say, making sure our decisions are sound.
That's a great way to put it. Evaluating what's already there rather than designing our response to it. And look, if you're navigating your path towards becoming licensed, maybe preparing for the NPPE, the National Professional Practice Examination, you absolutely need to grasp these definitions. They're foundational. So if you want more deep dives like this, more insights relevant to your NPPE journey, honestly, just hit that subscribe button now. It'll really help you stay informed. Okay, so let's get into the legal nuts and bolts. Most places in Canada, pretty much everywhere except PEI and the Yukon, regulate professional geoscience through specific laws, specific acts. What's the core definition look like across these laws?
Well, what's interesting is how consistent they are. The acts don't just give a simple job title. Instead, they define the practice using three essential dimensions, all interconnected. Your work generally has to tick all three boxes to legally require a PGO license. Let's maybe set aside the dense legal text for a second. What the law really cares about are three core questions. What are you actually doing the professional action itself? Why are you doing it? What's the goal or objective? And how are you doing it? What's the scientific basis?
Okay, that simplifies it. Let's break down that first one, the nature of work. What kind of actions are we talking about here? What makes an action fall under the PGO's responsibility?
The key thing here is professional judgment, especially when it relates to risk or resource potential. You see activities listed like reporting, advising, evaluating, interpreting, maybe classifying reserves. These are all actions where you're taking raw data and transforming it into a professional opinion or conclusion. Yeah. That's where the independent licensed judgment comes in. You're translating the facts into something actionable.
Right, it's not just collecting data, it's the step beyond that.
Exactly. Then you've got the second dimension, the purpose of work. Why are you doing this evaluation or interpretation? The laws typically state the work needs to be aimed at discovering or developing natural resources. Think oil, gas, minerals, water, that sort of thing. But crucially, it also includes just investigating the surface or subsurface conditions of the Earth, full stop, even if resources aren't the immediate goal.
Okay, that second part feels really important. Investigating Earth conditions. That clearly brings in environmental geoscience, hydrogeology, geotechnical work. It's not just about finding oil or gold.
Precisely. If your job is, say, evaluating slope stability for a new road or assessing how groundwater contamination might spread, the purpose is still investigating the Earth's natural condition. That falls squarely within the regulated scope.
Makes sense. And the third dimension, the scientific and mathematical foundation. The acts say the work must require applying principles of math, chemistry, physics, or biology through the lens of geoscience principles. Why mandate that scientific basis?
Well, that's really the guardrail. It separates the work of a licensed professional from, say, an experienced technician or operator. It ensures there's analytical depth, quantitative rigor behind the conclusions. The law demands that decisions impacting public safety or major investments are rooted in solid, testable scientific methods, not just, a gut feeling or simple observation.
Okay, can you give us some concrete examples? How do those science pillars, math, chemistry, physics, biology, actually show up in regulated practice?
Sure. Think about physics. That's the heart of geophysics, right? Using gravity surveys, magnetic surveys, seismic methods to map out what's underground. You're applying physics principles to see into the Earth. Mathematics is crucial for any kind of quantitative modeling, predicting how groundwater flows, how fast contaminants might move, processing complex seismic data. These all need advanced math skills, often at an engineering or geoscience level.
Okay, physics and math. What about chemistry and biology?
Chemistry is absolutely vital for geochemistry, environmental work, mining. Analyzing rock and soil compositions, understanding acid rock drainage, figuring out how contaminants behave chemically in the ground. And biology is increasingly important too. for things like baseline environmental studies, understanding ancient life through paleontology, or assessing how geology and ecosystems interact. This broad scientific requirement ensures the professional judgment is really well grounded.
So putting it all together, if the work involves interpreting Earth systems using these high-level scientific methods for a purpose that could affect the public or environment, then you're definitely in the regulated zone requiring a PGO. I want to circle back to interpretation and evaluation. You said that's the intellectual core. Let's take a practical example. Say I'm a field tech. I collect rock samples, run standard tests in a mobile lab. Or does my job stop and the PGO's legal responsibility kick in? Is it purely at that interpretation stage?
That's a really fundamental question, especially for people entering the profession. And yes, the line is generally drawn when that raw data needs to be synthesized, integrated, and used to draw conclusions about risk, about feasibility, about resource quantity or quality. A technician typically executes the procedures, collects the data according to standards. The PGO is the one who takes all that data, the seismic profiles, the lab results, the drill logs, and weaves it into a coherent interpretation, the professional statement of fact or recommendation.
So the tech might measure seismic wave travel times.
Right, but the licensed geoscientist, the PGO, is the one who interprets those patterns to say, okay, based on this, there's a potentially active fault right under where they want to build this school, or this structure looks promising for trapping oil. That assessment of meaning, risk, and potential, that's what the law regulates because of its impact.
Which leads us naturally into advising and reporting. These aren't just internal memos. Things like mineral reserve estimates, environmental impact assessments, reports on geological stability, they drive huge decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're often the main tangible output, the currency of the profession, if you like. Whether you're advising a government agency on, say, the geological suitability of a dam site, or reporting to investors on how much ore is in a deposit. These are high-stakes documents, and the law is clear. These types of reports, the ones with significant implications, must be prepared or directly supervised by a licensed professional. The PGO takes full legal and ethical ownership of the conclusions. They sign it, they seal it, and they accept the professional liability that comes with it.
That seal is powerful then. It's a mark of accountability.
It really is.
Now let's tackle an area that often causes confusion. The overlap between geoscience and engineering, especially in fields like geotechnical engineering, they're often working on the very same projects, the same piece of ground. How does the regulation draw the line there?
It's definitely a complex interface, and collaboration is key. But the defining criterion, legally speaking, usually comes back to that interpretive versus design focus. You could maybe think of it in stages. Stage one is the investigation and evaluation of the natural system. What are the geological conditions? How strong is the rock? What's the groundwater doing? Is there a landslide risk? That's primarily the PGO's domain, interpreting the Earth itself.
Okay, investigation first, then what?
Stage two is often the design stage. Here, an engineer takes the geoscientist's findings, the ground conditions, the risks, and uses that information to design the human solution. That could be the retaining wall, the building foundation, the tunnel lining. The engineer's focus shifts to the constructed system. Now, in reality, it's not always perfectly sequential. There's overlap. A good geotechnical engineer needs solid geological understanding. But if the core task involves complex evaluation and interpretation of the natural Earth system itself, for reporting or advising purposes that impact safety or the environment, then a PGO's professional authority on seal are typically required for that specific interpretive component of the work.
So it's about ensuring the right expertise is accountable for the right part of the job, even when collaborating.
Exactly. Collaborative practice, but with clear lines of professional responsibility based on the core nature of the work interpretation of the natural system versus design of the engineered system.
This really underscores that the legal definition isn't just a checklist of tasks. It's fundamentally about assigning professional responsibility. Only a registered, licensed geoscientist can officially take responsibility for that interpretive work when it affects public safety, property, or the environment.
That's the whole point of licensing, isn't it? It ensures practitioners meet specific standards of competence, that they exercise independent professional judgment, and critically, that they adhere to a binding code of ethics. That act of signing and sealing a report or a map isn't just paperwork. It's a declaration. I, as a licensed professional, stand behind the accuracy and rigor of this work and I accept the professional consequences. It's the boundary marker.
And that accountability, that ethical dimension, wasn't always as strong as it is today. Let's talk about the ethical implications, maybe using the Bre-X mining scandal from the 90s as a case study. That wasn't just a business failure, it really shook the foundations of geoscience regulation in Canada.
Oh, absolutely. Bre-X is a classic, albeit painful example of why this professional accountability enshrined in law is so critical. For those who don't know, Bre-X Minerals claimed they'd found this absolutely massive gold deposit in Indonesia. Turned out it was based on, well, fraudulent geological reports and systematic tampering of sample salting, they call it. The impact was catastrophic when the fraud came to light. Billions of dollars in investor money vanished almost overnight. But beyond the financial ruin, it severely damaged public trust in the entire mining sector and specifically in the reliability of professional geological assessments. It became a crisis of confidence.
And how did the regulatory system respond? Did Bre-X directly lead to the stricter rules we see now?
It was a major catalyst, yes. It brutally highlighted the potential consequences of negligent, incompetent, or outright fraudulent geological reporting. It led directly to a significant tightening of regulations across Canada. Things like National Instrument 43-101 were developed, setting strict standards for how mineral resource estimates must be calculated, reported, and disclosed. And crucially, it reinforced the absolute requirement that only qualified, licensed professionals, PGOs in this context, could sign off on these crucial reports. They became the gatekeepers of technical accuracy and ethical conduct.
So the legal definition of geoscience, in practice, acts as an ethical boundary too. It forces that responsibility.
Precisely. It enforces the moral and legal obligation to practice with honesty, with transparency, and with scientific rigor, all because the work directly impacts public welfare, safety, and the environment. So if we try to boil it all down, what is professional geoscience in Canada? It's a professional practice applying core scientific principles, math, physics, chemistry, biology, to study, evaluate, and interpret our natural Earth systems and resources. And this is done for specific important purposes: advising, reporting, or discovering information that has real consequences for the environment, for public safety, and for the economy. At its heart, it's about accountable, science-based stewardship.
That's a very clear synthesis. The link between the science, the purpose, and the accountability is undeniable. It really defines the profession's role in society. Okay, let's wrap up with a thought to take away. We'd established that the profession is defined by public safety, by accountability, and responsible resource management, all hinging on that human, professional judgment sealed with liability. So, here's something to think about. With the incredibly rapid rise of AI and sophisticated machine learning capable of analyzing vast data sets, how might this challenge or perhaps even reinforce the need for a licensed geoscientist professional judgment in the future? If a machine can perform complex interpretations potentially faster and, maybe someday, more accurately, where does that line of legal and ethical accountability ultimately rest? Something to ponder, definitely. If you found this deep dive helpful, especially if you're prepping for the NPPE exam, or if you're just interested in the professions that ensure our world operates safely and sustainably, please do subscribe. We'll bring you more insights to help you succeed on the NPPE exam and understand these critical fields. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.